For 10 seasons, we ask the question, who is Raymond Reddington? We've watched him outsmart the Cabal, dismantle criminal empires, and manipulate FBI task forces like pieces on a chessboard. But beneath all the cunning, all the secrets, lies the biggest mystery of all, his identity. Some theories made perfect sense. Others sounded insane. Until you looked closer. Today, we're diving into 5 of the wildest, most outrageous fan theories about Reddington's true identity. And you might just leave believing one of them. If you're already hooked and you love digging into the Blacklist's deepest secrets, make sure you hit like and subscribe right now. Because what's coming next might completely rewrite how you see this show. Theory number 1. Reddington is Katarina Rostova in disguise. Let's start with the theory that has caused the most online battles. The idea that Reddington isn't just connected to Katarina Rostova. He is Katarina Rostova, after a complete transformation. For years, fans of the Blacklist have debated whether Raymond Reddington, the smooth-talking criminal mastermind we've followed for 10 seasons, is actually the same man the world once knew, or if his identity is nothing more than an elaborate mask. This theory claims that the person we see as Red is actually Katarina Rostova herself, having undergone a total physical and identity transformation to survive. The seeds of this theory were planted as early as Season 6, when Dom, Katarina's father, is caught in a rare moment of vulnerability. In a quiet, emotionally charged exchange, he refers to Reddington as her. It's a tiny detail, one that could be brushed off as a slip of the tongue or an oddly phrased metaphor. But to fans who already suspected something deeper, it was a flashing neon sign. Why would Dom, a man who knows both the real Reddington and his daughter's true history, use that pronoun unless he was hinting at something only he knew? Then there's Red's fiercely protective, almost motherly high behavior toward Elizabeth Keene. His protection of Liz often goes beyond strategic necessity. He doesn't just guard her from physical danger, he shields her from emotional harm, intervenes in her personal life, and even tolerates betrayal from her in ways that defy pure logic. In the criminal underworld, betrayal is almost always met with swift, decisive retaliation. But with Liz, Red endures it, forgives it. Sometimes he even blames himself for it. Many fans see this as evidence that Red's connection to Liz runs deeper than any criminal mentor bond, that it's the love of a mother for her child, even if that mother is hiding in the body of a feared international fugitive. Perhaps the most glaring piece of circumstantial evidence is Reddington's long-standing avoidance of any official DNA match that could confirm or deny his identity. Time and again, moments arise where Red could easily prove who he is, or disprove the accusations against him, with a simple test. Yet somehow, every attempt is interrupted, sabotaged, or quietly swept under the rug. The avoidance isn't just cautious. It feels intentional, as if the truth about his biology would reveal something far more shocking than anyone expects. From the perspective of those who believe this theory, the logic is compelling. If Katarina knew her enemies, from the Cabal to former Soviet operatives, would never stop hunting her, what better way to disappear than to become someone so feared and well-connected that no one would dare touch her? Adopting the identity of Raymond Reddington, a man with influence across criminal networks, would provide the perfect cover. She could move freely, operate with impunity, and protect Liz from the shadows, all while hiding in plain sight. Of course, not everyone buys it. Critics of the Reddington is Katarina theory argue that his personality, mannerisms, and sheer physical capabilities don't align with her history. They point to inconsistencies in the timeline, moments where the known whereabouts of Katarina and Reddington simply don't match up. They also argue that Red's romantic relationships, his military knowledge, and his combat experience suggest a past that can't be easily explained away by a simple disguise. Still, the theory refuses to die, largely because the show itself seems to keep feeding it just enough breadcrumbs to keep fans guessing. Mysterious comments, deliberate misdirections, and emotionally charged moments between Red, Dom, and Liz have all added fuel to the fire. Whether intentional or not, the writers have created a mystery so layered that even the most outrageous explanations can feel plausible. And that's the real kicker. If this theory is true, it's not just about the identity of Raymond Reddington. It's about rewriting the entire emotional foundation of the Blacklist. It would mean that the heart of the story has always been about a mother's love, hidden behind the mask of one of the world's most dangerous men. And if that's the case, then every choice, every sacrifice, and every betrayal we've witnessed takes on a whole new meaning. Theory number 2. Reddington is Liz's real father, but not the original Raymond Reddington. If the first theory is the show's most shocking, this one is its most personal. And for some fans, it's also the most emotionally satisfying, but with a twist that still keeps the mystery alive. The premise is simple, or at least, it starts that way. Raymond Reddington is, in fact, Liz Keene's real biological father. The catch? The man we've been watching for 10 seasons is not the original Raymond Reddington. Now, at first glance, this sounds almost straightforward. Of course the man would protect his daughter at all costs. That's what loving fathers do. But this theory opens up a storm of questions. If he's not the original Reddington, then who exactly is he? Why would Liz's real father hide his true identity behind another man's name? And how far back does this deception go? The evidence we can start with Season 8. In one of the most carefully worded moments of the entire series, Red admits to knowing the truth about Liz's past. But he never actually says it out loud. It's classic Reddington, revealing just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to close the case. For many viewers, this was the writers practically winking at the audience, hinting that there's more to their relationship than guardian and ward. Then there's his unwavering willingness to put himself in harm's way for her. Reddington isn't reckless. He's strategic. Yet when it comes to Liz, strategy often goes out the window. He's charged into firefights, walked into traps, and put himself between her and danger countless times. That's not just operational loyalty. That's blood-level commitment. Another telling clue? His almost eerie knowledge of her childhood, memories, fears, even the kinds of dreams she used to have. This isn't the kind of detail you can piece together from a file. It's the sort of knowledge you earn by being there, by holding the flashlight during a thunderstorm when she was scared, by hearing the creak of the floorboards outside her bedroom and knowing exactly how to calm her down. The fan argument. If Reddington is Liz's biological father, it explains everything. The attachment, the secrecy, the unbreakable bond, even when she turns on him. But if he's not the original Reddington, then we're dealing with something even more intriguing. Maybe he's a close family member or a trusted friend of her parents who stepped in after tragedy struck. In this version of the theory, the original Raymond Reddington may have died years ago, possibly in connection with the night of the fire, the pivotal event that shaped Liz's life. This new Reddington could have taken his identity as a way to protect Liz, keep her enemies confused, and maintain control of the resources the real Reddington had built. It's a theory that mixes paternal love with a chess master's strategy. By becoming Raymond Reddington, this man ensured Liz would always have protection, but also that her enemies would always underestimate the true nature of their connection. The counterpoint. Of course, not everyone buys this one. Critics argue it's too obvious, pointing out that the Blacklist has built its reputation on complex layered reveals, not straightforward family ties. They also note that if this were the answer, it could have been confirmed seasons ago without ruining the show's momentum. But for supporters, the too obvious critique is exactly what makes it brilliant. Sometimes the simplest answer is the hardest to accept, especially in a show where we're trained to see conspiracies in every shadow. And if the writers really wanted to keep us off balance, hiding the truth in plain sight would be the perfect move. If you're loving these deep dives and you think we've hit on something close to the truth, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed. We're just getting started. Theory number 3. Red is the original Reddington. Who outsmarted death? This theory strips away the wildest identity swaps and deep conspiracies and asks a surprisingly simple question. What if the man in the fedora is exactly who he says he is? That Raymond Reddington, naval officer turned most wanted fugitive, didn't vanish, didn't get replaced, and didn't assume someone else's life. Instead, he pulled off one of the most legendary disappearing acts in history, surviving against all odds and returning to the world on his own terms. The core idea. The premise is straightforward. The original Reddington didn't die in the Christmas Eve fire, wasn't secretly someone else, and didn't have his identity stolen. He simply faked his death, shedding his old life to operate in the shadows. That gap in his history, the years when the world believed he was gone, was a carefully calculated move, not a tragic accident. The evidence first. There's his intimate knowledge of classified Navy missions. This isn't information someone could casually research. Time and again, Red has revealed details of operations, covert dealings, and high-level strategy that feel lived in. These aren't just facts. They're memories. The way he tells these stories, complete with subtle emotional cues, suggests first-hand experience, not second-hand reports. Second, look at the ease with which he reconnects with old contacts. Whether it's a smuggler in Singapore, a warlord in Eastern Europe, or a fellow operative from decades past, Red slides back into these relationships like no time has passed. These aren't the interactions of an imposter carefully maintaining a cover. They're organic, loaded with shared history, unspoken debts, and mutual respect, the kind only earned by actually living that life. Then we have the infamous burn scars theory. Sharp-eyed fans have spotted moments when Red's back and torso reveal signs of severe burns. These scars could be from the very event that was supposed to kill him, the legendary fire. If that's the case, then Reddington didn't die. He endured. He could have used the chaos of that night to disappear, allowing the world to believe in his death while he rebuilt his life as a figure more dangerous and resourceful than ever before. The fan argument supporters of this theory see it as the ultimate long game. Instead of swapping identities or orchestrating an elaborate masquerade, the real Reddington simply played dead. Disappearing gave him the freedom to shed the rules and constraints of his old life. He could move through the criminal underworld without the baggage of being a disgraced officer. He could build his empire without interference. And, perhaps most importantly, he could prepare to face the enemies who had nearly destroyed him, on his terms. For these fans, the continuity in Reddington's personality, values, and even his quirks is a dead giveaway. His dry humor, his love for fine things, his sharp tactical mind. They argue these traits are too natural, too consistent to be part of an act. The counterpoint. The big obstacle here is the DNA storyline. In the show, we see evidence suggesting that the man we know as Reddington is not the original. For many viewers, that's the nail in the coffin for this theory. But in the Blacklist, nothing is ever straightforward. DNA tests can be manipulated. Evidence can be swapped. Entire cases have unraveled because a single trusted source turned out to be compromised. If Reddington wanted the truth about his identity hidden, even from Liz, tampering with forensic results would be a small price to pay. Some theorists even suggest the DNA reveal was a deliberate misdirect, designed to send Liz and the audience chasing the wrong answers while the real truth sat in plain sight. Why this theory won't die. Ultimately, this theory has staying power because it requires fewer moving parts than the others. There's no secret twin, no lifelong imposter, no elaborate gender swap twist. Just one man, cunning enough to survive the impossible, patient enough to rebuild in the shadows, and bold enough to walk back into the FBI's front door when the time was right. Theory number 4. Red is a completely new identity created by the Cabal. If the other theories deal in deception on a personal scale, this one takes the conspiracy to a global level. It imagines Reddington not as an imposter, nor as a survivor, but as a creation. A high-value, deep-cover asset built from the ground up by one of the most dangerous shadow organizations in the Blacklist universe. The Cabal. The core idea. The Cabal, as fans know, is no ordinary syndicate. They are an intricate web of politicians, spies, intelligence officers, and global power brokers who operate entirely off the books. If anyone has the resources to construct a person, complete with a false past, forged records, and carefully placed relationships, it's them. This theory claims that Raymond Reddington never existed in any meaningful sense before the early 1990s. The man we see in the show was manufactured for a purpose, possibly to act as the Cabal's ultimate agent, a fixer with enough influence, charisma, and tactical brilliance to pull off impossible missions without ever being traced back to them. The evidence first. There's the Cabal's history with deep cover operations. The show has repeatedly revealed their ability to create and sustain false identities for decades. Entire political careers, criminal empires, and intelligence legends have been based on fabricated biographies. In that world, creating someone like Reddington would be business as usual. Second, There's the sudden rise of Reddington in the criminal underworld. The record shows almost nothing about him before the early 90s. Then, seemingly overnight, he's feared and respected in every major black market network. This is exactly what you'd expect if his identity was carefully seeded. The Cabal could have placed him in key positions, staged high-profile wins to build his reputation, and ensured that the legend of Raymond Reddington spread like wildfire. Then we have his unparalleled access to the Cabal's inner workings. Red knows about hidden operations, black sites, and intelligence archives that even high-ranking government officials don't have clearance for. While some fans chalk this up to his own resourcefulness, others point out that such access is more consistent with someone who was once inside, or someone who was designed to be inside from the very beginning. The fan argument supporters of this theory see it as the most logical explanation for how Red always seems several moves ahead. His uncanny ability to predict government responses, anticipate Cabal tactics, and manipulate international crises would make perfect sense if he'd been trained and placed by the Cabal themselves. They also argue that this is why Red is so hard to kill. The Cabal doesn't just let anyone operate at his level, and even if they've since severed ties with him, the very networks they built for him might still keep him alive. The counterpoint. The biggest hole in this theory is Liz. If Red were truly a Cabal invention, designed to serve their interests without distraction, then his emotional attachment to Elizabeth Keene makes no sense. The Cabal doesn't tolerate liabilities, and personal bonds are the ultimate liability in their line of work. Some fans explain this by suggesting that Liz was part of his cover story at first, perhaps a way to gain leverage over her mother, Katarina Rostova, but that somewhere along the way, the line between fiction and reality blurred. What started as manipulation became genuine care, and that shift might be the very reason Red eventually turned against the Cabal. Others reject the theory outright, saying Red's independence and constant sabotage of the Cabal's plans show that he could never have been their creation. If anything, they argue, his insider knowledge comes from having infiltrated them later, not from being born of them. Why this theory works for some fans. For the fans who love this theory, it's because it keeps the Cabal at the heart of the story. It turns Reddington into a product of the very system he spends the series dismantling, making his vendetta against them a personal rebellion against his own origins. In their eyes, it's the ultimate betrayal. A weapon the Cabal forged to control the world, now pointed right back at them. If Red was made by the Cabal, then everything, every mission, every alliance, every betrayal, has been part of a bigger game. But who's really been in control all along? Let us know what you think in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss our final craziest theory. Theory number 5. Red is the brother of the real Katarina Rostova. Of all the identity theories floating around the Blacklist fandom, this one is the least discussed. Yet for some fans, it might be the most elegantly simple. It suggests that Reddington's fierce loyalty to Elizabeth Keene, his intimate knowledge of Katarina Rostova's past, and his constant drive to protect her legacy can all be explained by one straightforward truth. He is Katarina's brother. The core idea. This theory strips away the more outlandish elements of other fan speculations. No body swaps, no massive identity rewrites, no Cabal-engineered operatives, and instead reframes the story as one of family loyalty. If Red is Katarina's brother, then every sacrifice, every risk, and every deception could be rooted in a simple but powerful motivation: protecting his sister's child. The evidence first. There's the familial loyalty Red displays when it comes to Katarina's memory. Unlike romantic theories, where his motivation might stem from love or guilt, this version of events is driven by blood ties. Red doesn't just care about Liz. He cares about the idea of preserving what's left of his sister's life. Throughout the series, his choices often reflect not just a desire to keep Liz alive, but to keep her aligned with Katarina's values and away from the enemies that destroyed her mother's life. Second, there's his access to the same intelligence circles Katarina operated in. If they grew up together or were trained in the same family tradition of espionage, it would explain why Red moves so effortlessly in the same dangerous world she inhabited. He knows the same players, speaks the same coded language, and can anticipate the moves of her allies and enemies alike. This isn't secondhand knowledge. It's the fluency of someone who was raised in that environment. Then there are Dom's subtle reactions to Red. Multiple scenes show Dominic Wilkinson, Katarina's father, looking at Red with a blend of trust, resentment, and something deeper. The kind of complex emotional mix that often comes from shared family history. He sometimes speaks to Red as if they've both been carrying the same decades-old burden, a burden only family could fully understand. The fan argument fans who support this theory argue that it neatly explains the intensity of Red's connection to Liz without resorting to romantic or parental revelations that some feel would cheapen the narrative. Instead, it gives us a story about an uncle who stepped into an impossible role, knowing he could never replace Liz's parents but determined to keep her safe at any cost. It also aligns with the tone of many of Red's interactions with Liz. He's warm and protective, but there's also a line he never fully crosses. A restraint that makes sense if his love is familial rather than paternal or romantic. The counterpoint critics of this theory often point out that the show has never explicitly hinted at Katarina having a brother, and that such a reveal might feel too underwhelming after years of mystery. In a series built on shocking twists, telling fans that Red is just her brother might not deliver the kind of dramatic payoff audiences expect. Others question whether the timeline supports the existence of an unmentioned sibling. Given how much of Katarina's past has been mined for plot points, they argue it's strange that no other character has ever referenced a brother, even in passing. Why this theory works for some fans. For the fans who embrace it, this theory resonates because it reframes the Blacklist as a story about family bonds, rather than romantic obsession or elaborate espionage games. It makes Red's devotion deeply personal without crossing into melodrama, and it keeps Katarina's presence alive in the show without needing her to constantly appear on screen. In this reading, Red's secrecy isn't about hiding his own identity from Liz. It's about protecting her from the truths about their family's past. The fact that he risks his life over and over again isn't about power plays or personal gain. It's about fulfilling a promise he made long ago to his sister. I'll protect her no matter what. So there you have it. 5 of the most outrageous, most hotly debated theories about Reddington's true identity. Reddington is Katarina Rostova in disguise. He's Liz's real father, but not the original Red. He's the original Red, who faked his own death. He's a Cabal creation, engineered for the perfect cover. And finally, he's Katarina's brother, driven by blood loyalty above all else. The truth might turn out to be stranger than all of them combined. And if it ever does come out, it could split the Blacklist fanbase in half. But until that day, these theories are what keep the mystery alive. The unanswered questions that pull us back in, season after season. So now it's your turn. Which one do you believe? Or do you have an even wilder theory we haven't covered? Drop it in the comments, smash that like button, share this with another Blacklist fan, and subscribe, because our next video might just change everything you thought you knew about Reddington.